Most cultures in the world have a variation of the golden rule, which helps them decide on the ethical and the moral behaviors to conduct while engaging with other individuals or other groups. So the golden rule states that you should treat others the way you want to be treated. So, this sounds simple. I like people being nice to me, and that is why I will be nice to you. So that sounds simple, but then we might want to also be careful, as there are multiple ways to actually interpret the golden rule. So two ways to interpret the golden rule include the rigid interpretation and the flexible interpretation, where the rigid interpretation is the more literal way to interpret the golden rule, where you, for example, if you like yogurt, so you might want to share yogurt with other people, and then somebody that you're sharing the yogurt with is lactose intolerant, but you will share it with them anyways because you treat people the way you want to be treated. You disregard the differences, the preferences, or the context or the reasons. So this is a more rigid interpretation of the golden rule, whereas there is the more flexible interpretation where you understand that different people have their own needs and requirements, and you are willing to also understand that there are different contexts for your conduct. So, for example, when a judge is actually judging a criminal, they wouldn't really let them go just because they don't want to be set free because the criminal has made a crime, whereas the judge didn't. So that's also something you want to consider while you interpret the golden rule, that context is important. So you might want to also be more flexible in your interpretation of the golden rule, where you accommodate to the needs of the situation or the person in front of you as you are conducting the golden rule. So for example, even if you like yogurt and the other person is lactose intolerant, you might find an alternative, such as sharing a lactose-free yogurt to that person to accommodate their needs. So that's a flexible interpretation of the golden rule. And then some people take it a step further, where they introduce something called the Planum rule, which states that you treat others the way they want to be treated. So here you treat people according to their own terms rather than what you want, rather than your terms. So that's an accommodating way of treating others. So the way you can look at it is through a spectrum, where between the golden rule and the Planum rule, where on one end you have the more assertive, rigid version of the golden rule, where you're willing to treat people according to your terms and according to your rules, that's on one end. And then you have the other end where you're more compliant and you treat people according to their rules and their terms and their rules. So you have different sides of the spectrum. Each probably has their own moments, and then you also have in the middle, where you're more willing to be reasonable with your terms and your rules, and that's the more flexible version of the golden rule. Of course, different situations might need you to implement different versions of the golden rule. So maybe in situations where you need to actually do or die situations, you might go with the rigid version of the golden rule, where you have to stand on your ground and stick to your morals and your principles, whereas in other situations you need to actually accommodate and consider what the other person wants, and you want to try to please the other person, where you use the more more a compliant version of the platinum rule, and then you have the more moderate approach where you treat people according to your terms and rules, but your terms and rules are also flexible and considerate due to certain contexts and situations and the needs of other people. So you also understand that there is a room for flexibility and interpretation to the golden rule. So a tool that might help us actually understand the differences between other people's behavioral needs and communication needs is the DISC assessment, or the DISC assessment. So the DISC assessment is a tool to help you better understand the different temperamental inclinations of individuals through 4 categories that depend on 2 different dimensions. This tool is easy to use, and you can rely on quick observations to make assessments using it. So this is a tool to help you better understand the differences between yourself and other individuals, and also better understand the needs of others from a more behavioral or attitudinal manner. You have 2 dimensions in which you assess the individual. The first dimension is the pace. So this measures the way information is handled, where fast-paced individuals tend to be more active with their information, whereas slow-paced individuals tend to be more thoughtful with their information. So the fast-paced individuals want to make decisions as soon as possible. They want to get things done. They want to live in the moment, whereas the slow-paced individuals actually want to process the information, actually want to analyze it, make sure that they understand it. They want to take their time while they process the information. So that's the pace dimension. And then you have the orientation dimension, which measures focus and interest. So between either being people oriented or task oriented. So where people oriented tend to be open to social interactions, whereas task oriented individuals tend to want to focus on the task at hand. So the people oriented individuals are more interested in small talk and getting to know people and asking about your day, whereas the task oriented individuals might be more interested in talking about the task at hand and getting down to business. So that's another way to measure, another dimension to measure the individual's attitude. So the first category that we are going to discuss is the dominance category, which are these individuals are result oriented and bottom line focused. So their pace is fast and their orientation is more on task focused. So their communication needs entails the end results. So you want to get to the bottom line. They care about getting things done. They're achievers. They're achievers, and they are decisive. They want to get things done and achieve the end results. So that's what they focus on, and they make good administrators, and also they make good managers in terms of getting things done, making sure that tasks are fulfilled. And then you have the influence. So these are outgoing and stimulation seeking. So they want to have fun. These individuals are also fast paced, but their orientation is on people. So their communication needs involve enthusiasm. So when you want to tell them something, make sure that it comes to them in an enthusiastic way. They want to have fun. They want to be live the life of the party. They're very interactive. They are very they can be very influential, and they can be good at negotiating since they like to keep things comfortable. They like to keep things informal and have fun. So that's the influence category of people. And then you have the steady. So these individuals are gentle and harmony seeking. They want to get along with people. Their pace is slow and their orientation is towards people. Their communication needs is comfort. So make sure that you are gentle in the way you interact with them. They tend to be good listeners, and they try to maintain the peace, uphold the peace, and make sure that everybody gets along. So that's what the steady individuals want. And then finally you have the conscientious individuals. These are analytical and detail focused. They want to get things right. So their pace is slow and they're task oriented. So they focus, and their communication needs involve details. So whenever you want to talk to them, you might want to show data and information that supports your communication. They care about getting things right. So they make the great technical people that were like great engineers. So the designer that for example, the person that designs an airplane, you want them to be conscientious in order to make sure that the plane works and doesn't fall. So of course that's something we will need to consider, that these people these kind of people are more detail focused and are focused on tasks and getting things right. So of course there is struggle amongst the different categories of people. So individuals that have diagonally opposed inclinations tend to struggle with each other. So it is important to learn to be flexible and accommodate the communication needs of others. So for example, the conscientious leaning individuals might view the influence leaning people as too irresponsible and too fun loving, whereas the influence leaning people think of the conscientious people as people that don't live their lives or don't have our buzz skills. So of course, so that might lead to friction, and if they treat each other by a rigid version of the golden rule, then that might lead to trouble and might lead to problematic results. So that's why there needs to be a certain degree of flexibility to get to know what each individual needs. So the conscientious individuals, or conscientious leaning individuals rather, tend to like to be organized and tend to focus on problem solving, whereas influence individuals tend to focus more on being interactive and being persuasive. So you instead of trying to get other people to be like you might want to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, so in order to work together. So that's also something to consider. And you also want to increase your self-awareness, to enhance self-awareness. You want to ask your friends, family members, and co-workers which category they believe that you are more inclined towards and how strong the inclination is. So that's to help self-awareness and understanding the differences between how you see yourself and how other people see you. That will enhance also understanding of perception. Of course, there is nobody that is purely so inclined to one category and that's it. No, everybody has all four categories in them. It's just that people are inclined to each category on a more different level. So for example, you might Your coworkers might think that you're an extreme C or extremely conscientious, while in fact you might see yourself as a mild steady. That's because during work time you focus too much on your work and getting things right and finishing your tasks, and that's why you might come across as somebody that is too analytical and organized and has no time for talking to people or getting along with them. Whereas the way you view yourself in your workplace as well as in your social and personal life. So that's why you might view yourself as more inclined to a more people-oriented side. And also you might also during stressful situations you might actually go and become a AD, for example, where you're very decisive and firm, so that even though you originally think of yourself as an S, so of course different situation might bring out different sides of your attitude and your temperament, but it's good to consider the different perceptions that you and different impressions that you have on other people, so that you have better understanding of yourself as well as others, to enhance your engagement and interactions and communications with others, to see where everybody's inclined. Of course, the DISC assessment is just a tool. It's not something that is absolute or something that you just want to categorize yourself just for the sake of categorizing. You want to use the DISC assessment in order to help you enhance your understanding of others and to also better engage with them and communicate with them. You want to aim for effective communication and engagement with the people in your life, and apply a proper ethical conduct, and make sure that you engage with other people successfully.